So we have two bills tonight, and I have had the pleasure for the last year attending OSHA Lifelong Learning creative writing class. I've had the pleasure of listening to Bill's stories for over a year now, and I demanded that I introduce him today. Please welcome William Sarnoff.
Thank you, Charles. You notice he had to adjust the microphone lower, smaller. Thank you, thank you. I want to talk a little bit about This Is What I Remember. I have a subtitle to it, and it says, Life Stories That Dance Their Way to Unexpected Conclusions. Now, I'm not a writer. I never was a writer, but 4 years ago, I sat in on a writing class at UO, where Margaret and the others here, and I sort of got the bug, and since then I've written 123 stories. I'd like to share a couple with them. They are in two of the books, Around the Samovar, and the other one is called, this This Is What I Remember. And I wrote, I am in an urgent race against the erasure of memory. For that reason, I've gathered assorted experiences free of sentimental throat-clearing that remain clear enough to share. Sooner or later, everybody sits down to a banquet of memories, and this is what I remember in my 93rd year on this planet. Heart and pulse thumping, siren screaming, speedometer hovering at 92, we're responding to an emergency call. It made no sense for me, a marketing guy, to be hurling down freeways in a siren blasting ambulance. I would no more consider doing that than practicing trapeze stunts over a raging river. I recently completed a basic emergency medical tech course, and I needed to gain street-side knowledge of how my company's emergency medical products performed in actual use. All I knew about managing trauma were the three universal healers in the world: calamine lotion, chicken soup, and hugs. That's all I knew. In my time, I remember seeing and meeting angels disguised as ordinary people living ordinary lives. Like Charles and Ellen. They were experienced EMS officers, and the 4 days spent under their tutelage gave me a deep respect for their work and dedication. It is not unusual for full moon nights and summer weekends to require round-robin calls, responding mostly to drunks and car accidents. Charles commented upon our first meeting. Midweek was referred to as easy time. Luckily, we had ample time together at the station house discussing the merits of my company's products. Charles had served in the Korean War as a platoon sergeant, over 6'2", that he carried like a banner. Ellen was a tawdry-built young woman with 2 marriages behind her, and of the attitude, if it has tires or testicles, I'm gonna have trouble with it. And the two of us are on the cover. That's Ellen and me, and the rig, the ambulance that we worked out of. Okay. The first one the first call we came during a desert downpour from a woman claiming her husband stopped breathing. Could we come out and give him an electric shock? Their dilapidated mobile home was in a flat scrub area on a desolate dirt road, with rain streaming down our windows thick as gelatin, accompanied by ponderous cracks of thunder. It was a challenge locating them. This was before the days of computers and GPS systems. The road to their shack was flatter, than any cliche. Even pancakes have a certain doughy topology. Nothing to guide us, only cactus and tumbleweeds. None of those spooky cow skulls. The only flora consisted of nondescript scrubs that resembled acre upon acre of toilet brushes, each buried to their hilt. Entering their shack with responder kits and defibrillator, we were met by a woman, agitated as a drop of water on a hot skillet, pointing toward a figure sprawled on a worm-eaten, weather-beaten, fold-out sofa. Her brown hair scattered over her wearied face, edged with warts on both cheeks. In the dank interior, we could discern an aging male in dirt-encrusted jeans, tattered boots, sweat-stained shirt, the color of plums, and a face rusted by abrasive desert weather. "How long since he stopped breathing?" Charlie asked calmly. "Don't rightly know," she said. "Been like that since last night." As we're driving out, all was quiet, and we came back to the day room. Everything always quiet the following day, except for routine deliveries, mostly of dispirited seniors from home to hospital, with one exception. A woman was giving birth in the hospital in a neighborhood baseball field located on the east side of town. "There's a little league tournament in progress," radioed the dispatcher, "and we have a call that a woman in an automobile has begun delivering. Advise specific location," Charles radioed back. "Woman is in a red car located on the west side of the field's parking lot. Headlights are on to help you locate. Confirm when women is made contact with," responded the dispatcher. Coming from our previous response, Charles had to traverse the entire park to the west end of the playing fields. "There it is," shouted Ellen as we passed the west bleachers, except there was a gully and a narrow pedestrian walkway that separated our rig from the woman, and that required her driving about 300 feet, finding a crossover, and then coming back up. "Grab your responder kit, Ellen, scoot across the walkway and encounter the woman. I'll continue down the side path, and first chance I get, we'll cross over. Bill and I will meet you with salines in the gurney," shouted Charles as Ellen sprinted out. Holy moly, the gully extended over 300 feet, as I said. Ellen did her job skillfully. In the back seat, she encountered a near comatose woman. Following standard procedure, Ellen slid her clothes and underwear to get to the birthing process. As Charles and I approached, we encountered a woman screaming, clutching her clothes, railing wildly at Ellen, and now with glares at Charles and me, started screaming with eyes that belonged in a scabbard. It was the wrong car. Why her headlights were on, we didn't know. We learned later the Escondido EMS office sent a letter of apology with a check. It was midweek and little action. My 4-day stint was coming to a close. Charles was busy polishing the rig. Ellen and I were sharing coffee drinks in the day room. "How'd you get started in this business?" I asked her. "After my second marriage ended, I joined a volunteer EMT squad as a social member," she said. "All I would have to do was help out at special events, sometimes bringing drinking water, coffee, and donuts to fire crews and stuff like that. Working previously as a school librarian, my job wasn't secure, and decided to take part in the first aid and CPR class at our community college. I guess you can say I caught the bug and haven't looked back. Ever since, I switched careers and I'm now a full-time officer and EMT. I very much enjoy my job and I don't think I could ever go back to an inside desk job. The greatest thrill in the world is having the ability to change someone's life every day you wake up. Call me a whacker, it's a term they use among EMS participants. She said, but I'm hooked. Wait, I said, but at times your own life is in danger. Is it worth it? Of course, and I love it. I will keep doing it every so often because maybe one time in 100, I actually save a life. And then she added, I do it, Bill, because it's easier than trying to save my own. True story. Thank you. Big Mouse and Little League. You're only given a little spark of madness and you mustn't lose it. My madness thrust itself on me when I was asked to coach a Little League team of 7- and 8-year-olds. It was in West Covina, 18 miles east of LA, where the heat waves belly dance over Interstate 10 during the summer playing season. Our field had neatly trimmed palm trees bordering the playing field. When evening breezes shuffled and clicked the swaying leaves like playing cards. I was somewhat surprised to learn when you coach a Little League team, what you often witness is the imposition of boorishness and the twilight of madness. First chore was to interview this collection of 7- and 8-year-olds, each with an expectant mom or dad, or sometimes both, watching my every move. Selections were made and practice schedule announced, and that's where Alvin entered my world of sports management. Alvin was nearing 8, and I was certain he was destined for a law career with his inherent penchant for asking questions. After our first practice question, Alvin asked, "Why does the pitcher raise one leg when he pitches?" The best I could respond was, if he raised both, he'd fall down. The first thing you do during the league practice is field ground balls to your players. The way to properly field a ground ball, I explained to the kids, is to stand in front of the ball as it's rolling toward you. That way, if the ball takes a short hop over your glove, you can block it with your body. So, fielding ground balls involves a lot of fast-moving baseballs smacking you in the chest or the face or the scrotum. My kids were amazed to learn that rubbing Crest toothpaste on those bruises soothes the pain. Other team managers didn't know that, and I felt proud to have added a dimension to the world of Little League Baseball. On our second practice session, I discussed that when you are on first base, look for any opportunity to steal second base, but you have to run very fast when you do steal a base. After 9 times up to bat and a score of 16-11, Alvin managed to hit a single. Once on base and heeding my earlier advice, he raced over to second base, grabbed it, and ran home after I told him to steal. Okay. Alvin was not an underachiever. He simply lacked any identifiable eye-hand coordination. I set him aside to practice tossing the ball and striking it with his bat, and I strolled off to coach other kids. Returning a couple of minutes later, I observed him tossing the ball, whacking, missing it, and he called out, "Strike 1." He tried it again, missed it again, he called strike 2. He did it again, and again, strike 3. And I said, that was when I came by, and I said, "How you doing, Alvin?" He said, "I ain't a very good batter, but I'm a real good pitcher." Figured out. Curtis was another cookie-cutter stereotype kid, the kind that rate high with grandparents with a whole different perspective on the game. To give my players any opportunity to play various positions, I told him, "You're going to play left field today, Curtis." "What's that?" I walked him to the position, and on the way he asked, "Do I get a snow cone later?" "Sure you do. Everybody gets a snow cone." "Lemon flavor is creepy. It looks like pea. Can I have cherry instead?" I said, "Sure you can, sport." He said, "Do I get a snow cone if I only play half a game?" "Of course," I said. "Then I'd like to play only half a game." At our first coach meeting, the league manager discussed the matter of hecklers. People like this make it difficult for the kids and spectators to have fun. Sure, we teach teamwork and good sportsmanship, but that's the entire point of Little League when you boil it all down. It all came to mind once in the middle of a game when I called an 8-year-old aside and asked, "Do you understand what sportsmanship is?" "Sure, Coach," he replied. "Do you understand what matters is that we play together as a team to the best of our ability?" "Sure, Coach," he replied. The boy nodded, and so I continued. "I'm sure you know that when an out is called, you shouldn't argue, curse, attack the umpire, or call him a peckerhead or an asshole. Do you understand all that?" Again, the kid nodded in the affirmative. "All right," I continued, "and when I take you out of the game so that another kid gets another chance to play, it's bad sportsmanship to call your coach a dumbhead. Is that right? You understand that?" He said, "Yes, Coach." I said, "Good. Now go over there and explain it all to your grandmother." That's it. A little story, true story. I call it a taste of Romania. In my growing up neighborhood, there was a furniture showroom, very large showroom that had gone bankrupt. It was a cavernous, high ceiling place with modest rental apartments above it. Like many other businesses, the ravaged economy of that time saw its demise. Forced into receivership and shuttered, the building languished for years, vacant and unattended. At 6 cents a dollar, the Joseph Skoruscu and family acquired the property with intent to remodel it into a restaurant to be named Joe's Romanian Steakhouse. His in-laws, Romanian immigrants who arrived 30 years prior when Teddy Roosevelt was president and whose savings were to support the venture, had other suggestions. No, Mama Stella said. We to call it Carol's Romanian Steakhouse after our nation's playboy, King Carol II. Despite Mama's adoration for him, he embarrassed his nation in 1940, running off to Portugal with their mistress, Elena Lupescu, and he never returned. There were many immigrants that loved ethnic food that was prepared there. And one couple had specifically reserved booth number 6, well in advance, stating that they were coming from Hyde Park, which was a Chicago suburb, and obviously they were romantically ensconced, gazing lovingly at each other, sipping plum wine and nibbling ears. Taking an order at an adjacent table, my friend Cyril, who was the waiter, noticed the man slowly sliding down the seat and under the table, while the woman remained transfixed. Cyril couldn't help but notice as he watched the man slide all the way down and out of sight, and all the while the woman just stood straight ahead. Cyril, thinking that this risque behavior might offend others, alerted his dad, who was the owner, who approached the table and tactfully inquired, "Pardon me, madam, but your husband just slid under the table." The woman, appearing somewhat distraught, replied, "No, he didn't. He just walked in the door." A little story called He Saw Me Coming. With a wave of a crutch, he brought out the best of me, kicking and screaming. I don't know how, but he knew I was going to stop for him. He stood there on the street corner on my Meals on Wheels route, leaning heavily on 2 metal arm crutches. As I drove by, he lifted one ever so slightly. In the burst of pre-holiday good-heartedness, I turned around to see if he needed help. 80-something with a face rusted by weather, he leaned into the open window and asked where I was going. Assuming he was looking for a ride home or to a nearby shopping center, I said, "Wherever you want, sir." That was my first mistake. He needed help pulling his crutches and squeezing his frail body into the passenger seat next to me. It took him a few minutes to settle in. And then I asked him where he wanted to go. Willamette Senior Center in Springfield, he responded, as though he was asking for a ride to the corner drugstore. It was a good 16 miles away. I was in the University District. I couldn't believe it. Having completed my lunch deliveries, I was heading back to the Red Cross office to return my unused food. Yeah. But I had made the offer, and he valiantly made the pained effort to climb into the car. I could hardly tell him to get out. I would take him to the center, apologize to my colleagues for being late, and done with it. Driving through large plopping raindrops with wipers nodding this way and that, I was in no mood for conversation. But he started asking questions. To be polite, I asked him a few and learned that he had spent his working years in the timber industry. "Did you like that work?" I asked. "Ah," he replied, his head back with a smile. "Love working out of doors. Wouldn't change it for anything." Drove him to his apartment, and his apartment looked homey and a little faded, like an attic filled with 1940s memorabilia that hadn't been moved in 50 years. They shared, he and his wife, an apartment with an ancient cat that resembled a very old suitcase. She was she looked like a decade younger than he, with a liver-spotted face like a slipcover over a rump spring sofa. Her yellow-white hair was pulled up, wound into a bun, and pinned into a place at the nape of her neck with plastic yellow hairpins. There was just one more detail. Someone had to go to the Springfield Center to pick up the food basket and bring it to them. By this time I was licked. I didn't even put up a fight. That barely perceptible wave of a crutch had drawn me into their lives. Maybe I was meant to play a small role, a very small role in putting a Thanksgiving dinner on their table. And this new friend, obviously a man of faith, had known it all along. Thank you. I have one called Getting High in Mexico. You know you're having a good time if you knew your mother would cry if she saw you doing this. She would cry, she really would, and that's how you know it's fun, which is why most folks won't risk their lives for a once-in-a-lifetime experience. Paragliding over Mexican waters where safety regulations are ignored is a real hoot to try. You do it in a small fishing village like Sayulita, 25 miles north of the big box hotel that crowd the Puerto Vallarta shoreline. But don't try hiding being a gringo with your limited high school Spanish. You'll just trip yourself up. I weighed 128 pounds after a very big dinner. I also stand 5 feet 5 inches in my socks. This matters, as you'll shortly learn when I tell you about paragliding off Mexico's coast and how I nearly didn't come down. Okay, I'm a shorty, but among my own tribe, I'm something of a giant. So when the guy behind the cardboard sign that said paragliding, $60, asked me which heavy, I tell instructor to arrange parachute. My 128 came out 182 in Spanish, and that's why I almost didn't come down. A cheery, gleaming face with I had a couple of beers, and a cheery, gleaming face with throat spilling out of his collar said, "Come back for boat in 1 hour with dinero, no plastico." So I enjoyed my couple of beers, and I came back and I handed over 320s, which seemed like a good value since my wife paid $80 for a social and a body rub. The paraglide guy said I would be about 10 minutes in the sky. There were no forms to fill out about one's health, no disclosures, and no insurance. Greeting me was a rotund, mustached local in a leaky motorboat. With a generous cerveza bolstering my courage, I was ready. We rowed across the other side of the bay, where in the shallows a speedboat waited. Its twin motors gurgled, and the sea frothed behind it as it marked time, straining against a stiff breeze and a tow rope. Attached to the other end of the rope was a parachute. Its canopy was already open, inflated and hovering in the wind, as two sturdy guys struggled to hold onto it while gripping a harness and shoving me into it without a word. Wait, wasn't there some kind of explanatory or preliminary material that I should know about this? Would they show me a video or a photo? With a shout of "Olay," the engines roared, the rope snapped right tight, and I found myself harnessed and pulled running through the shallows, and I was up and away, and up and up. I shot straight into the sky like a rocket. They played out more rope and I still rose. Within seconds I seemed to be vertically above the boat, staring down at it with a kite's eye view down the long line towing me. At the other end I could see the boat, very tiny now, plunging through the waves. I could see the whole bay. I could see Puerto Vallarta. I could hear nothing but the wind in my ears as I swung suspended beneath the chute. I began to feel slightly airsick with a lot of liquid sloshing inside me. Gotta go, I said, but my flight went on and on and on. They couldn't get me down. I was far lighter than they had allowed for, and the headwind much stronger. Each time the boat stopped in the middle of the bay to allow the parachute to descend in the Pozamian shallows, I just stayed up. Every time the boat reversed to let me run with the wind, I overshot the shallows. It looked like I would become a permanent fixture above the Mexican coast, a sort of perpetually floating kite, an advertisement for a stupid gringo. All good things come to an end, of course. Pulling on various nylon cables in response to desperate calls from the beach finally brought me down. With a gentle splash, I landed just before nightfall. I'm not sure I wanted to. Very short one.
Are you about done? You got a short one?
Yeah,
all right.
Short one.
Oh, okay.
This is the last. I call this Navigating the Seas. And rather than telling it in story form, I tell it in forms of email, one friend to another. And you'll get the story. This is Sunday. And this is an email to her friend Celeste and attention lunch gals. And she says, "Thank you all for the surprise Bon Voyage party yesterday. It's been a challenging 2 years since Martin's passing, but here I am in Fort Lauderdale waiting to board my ship for a Caribbean cruise, my first ever. As you suggested, I did drop in at Lilac and Lily's, the trendy boutique shop on Sunrise Boulevard, and really splurged. Bought a daring two-piece swimsuit with matching beach towel robe and carry-all bag. Even found a color-coordinated pair of poolside slippers. First time alone on a trip since our engagement trip 30 years ago. As Cindy commented at one of our many toasts, life is about moments. Don't wait for them, create them. Well, here I go. Monday, email. I'm not going to let Martin's illness and passing cause me to be a recluse any longer. I'm going to fluff on my tutu, unwrap my dancing shoes, and dance away to a live shipboard orchestra. Yippee, spent the entire day on the open sea at poolside. Thank you, Corinne, for coercing me to join your Pilates class. I feel more confident having my figure back, and with lotions at the ready, am also eager to gather up some sun. Met the navigator of this giant ship on a passenger tour through the pilot house and the navigation desk. He seemed like a nice person and very confident about guiding this giant vessel, an almost modern-day version of Clint Eastwood, except he was taller and darker. There was sinew and a casual audacity about him, and I thought him quite attractive. Tuesday, to Celeste and the lunch gals. We're heading to Cozumel. Weather is magnificent. Played shuffleboard at poolside. Lunch on outdoor Lido deck with 3 roaming violinists performing in perfect unison, playing Hungarian and old world classics. Sweet. Ship's navigator strolled by and said hello again and joined me for an exotic and sweet herbal tea. His name is Oliverio Geo Tenerelli. Too attractive, I think, to be cooped up all day with his blinking GPS monitor, steering levers and compasses. No sign anywhere of a helm's wheel, not even a miniature one. Wednesday, to Celeste, email, and the lunch gals. Had my hair done, massage, facial, the works in the ship's elegant beauty salon. Real spendy, but their staff of Indonesian stylists are truly superb. I like my new look. Spent all afternoon in the casino and luck was with me. Won $600. Oliverio happened to pass through and invited me to join him at his table for dinner. He is quite attractive in his crisp uniform, and I'm comfortable with his easy smile and manners. A far cry from Martin's ongoing criticalness of the world. He called me Canarino all through dinner, which he told means canary in Italian. I had a wonderful time, and he invited me to spend the night in his cabin when he came off duty. I declined. What would my children think? Thursday, to Celeste and the lunch gals. We're on our way for the ship's next destination to Half Moon Cay, a private island owned and staffed by our cruise line. An impressive barbecue spread, never-ending supply of rum and cokes, Cayman Island singers and musicians, and Oliverio. Had several drinks together, spent the balance of the day strolling the beach, hand in hand. He stopped abruptly and told me he was madly in love with me, had to have me, he said over and over. He insisted I join him in the suite on board and got very emotional, saying if I refused, he would run the ship onto the shoal with all 3,200 passengers. I was shocked. It was a dilemma I had never faced before in my life. Fridays, to Celeste and the girls. Last night, I saved 3,200 lives. Twice. Thank
Bill Sarnoff.